Hello and welcome to Optional Rule. My name is Scott. I do this weekly show for D&D discussion, design, talk about all things D&D and how just whatever's on my mind that week, campaign prep, whatever else like that. Thank you very much for joining me today. I'm going to go ahead and increase the font here like I typically do. And I hope you'll join in the discussion. This is a discussion show. I'm usually focused on whatever blog post I have coming up that week, whatever design discussion I have going on, all of that sort of thing. And I'm going to talk about a design discussion I have today to adapt the Journey and Sanctuary rules from Adventures in Middle-earth to 5th edition D&D. I think that has fantastic potential. I'll talk a little bit about a gritty healing post I made this week, which is really just kind of kitschy. But this is really adapting the Journey and Sanctuary rules, if done right, I think can... Excuse me, sorry about that. I'm drinking my Life is Good mug today, by the way. I hope you can see that, because I need to remember that. But so yeah, what these rules can do is really transform the travel experience in the or really strengthen the exploration pillar in D&D. It provides way to extend injuries and things like that over journeys. It creates situations where long rests are not necessarily automatic. There's a bunch of stuff that I think can do a lot without the harsh pacing of the gritty realism rules from the DMG, but really provides a lot of managed play during travel and your interaction with the towns you're in, the people in the area, to seek out or get sanctuary or not get sanctuary, that will seriously affect your ability to rest, regain spells, and all those kinds of things. So I think this can be crazy transformative for the game. So I'm going to work through that. But first, I'm going to talk a little bit about the blog post I made earlier in the week. If you like that kind of thing, I made a proposed rules for gritty healing and survival. I put these up. Now, to put these in context, sorry, I'm going to mute myself so I can cough. Sorry, I drank the wrong way. Cut myself shaving yesterday. You still see it. Bad. Anyway, so these rules are really designed for a couple of sessions where people want really, really hardcore survival rules, Darkest Dungeon, that kind of thing. I mean, I like them because I like role. There's something I like about roles, right? The uncertainty and discovery of roles. I like that as a player. And this leans in heavily to that. It slows down healing, significantly leans into the hit die mechanic. I hope you'll take a look at it. Again, I don't recommend this for normal play, but for like a 3 or 4 session campaign or 3 or 4 session one shot, I think this could be fun. Really limits things significantly. It includes significant change to the healing mechanic, significant change to the spell mechanic, when and where spells can be cast, and how they affect play. Now, some of this might apply to the redesign for rules today, but really I need to go through what it is, what elements I'm looking to pull from it, and how I'm going to adapt that to 5e. So that's what I'm going to talk about today for the most part. Let me get rid of this little bit here. You don't need the table of content. So that's where I'm going to be noodling over that today. So when I design something, I start off with what features do I want? Out of these rules, right? So I can always do a check. Am I achieving this? So now this is, let me explain quickly the journey rules. Some of them I'm going to lift directly. A lot of them will require adaptations. So Adventures in Middle-earth was published by, let me look it up actually. So they were published 3 years ago, something like that. They are a 5th edition adaptation of 5th edition D&D to a Middle-earth realm. There's significant difference in those rules. They have mechanics for I have a hard time looking and talking at the same time. They have mechanics for things like the shadow, which is the sort of the despair that's present in Middle-earth. They have separate rules for journeys. You can see these rules here. I'm going to take them down because there's somebody's copyrighted material, and I don't want to out that, although I'm about to adapt some of it. They have great rules for journeys, where people can take on roles in a party for journeys. We're going to get into that today and how that might apply. When and where you can take long rests, which we're directly going to apply that. And basically, in Adventures in Middle-earth, you can't take a long rest unless you're in a sanctuary. So something like Rivendell or Lothlorien, it seems a little strange because these are really extended mechanics for sometimes in Middle-earth and Lord of the Rings anyway. They were out in the field for a long time, so I don't know how it quite applies. But it has a lot of potential for 5th edition if I add in a few other supporting rules as well. you'll see I'll add something in called base camps or field camps, right? That you might be able to establish. But they're just really great rules. Who made this? I'm looking in a different window, obviously. Adventures in Middle Earth 5e. They don't have the publisher's mark on the front. Sophisticated Games. That's great. And Crucible 7. So Crucible 7 Sophisticated Games. Anyway, this one, Crucible 7 is the one who published it. They went out of print on Adventures in Middle Earth. I guess they weren't selling. I don't know. And folded that sometime last year. You could get copies of it still on Humble Bundle. I think they put out PDFs out there. So it's difficult to get right now. If you look for the old game bin, you might be able to find print copies of it. I recommend it. It really is a great game. It leans heavily. Probably the biggest mismatch of this system for 5e to me is that none of the classes are really spell casting classes. They're all abilities. And I think some crazy portion, like 80% of the subclasses, if you throw in the subclasses, 80% of the subclasses in 5th edition use spells in some way, shape, or form. So 5th edition leans crazy heavily into spells. Tusky the Dwagon, welcome. It's great to have you here. Thanks for saying hi. I appreciate it. I'd love to hear what your D&D experiences are like and what you enjoy doing in D&D. If you ever have anything to add to the discussion, please go ahead and do that. So anyway, yeah, that's Adventures in Middle Earth. And I'm going to adapt some of that. The two things I want to adapt are the Journey rules, which basically are Journey and Sanctuary rules. So let's start with the Sanctuary rules themselves. Say that you can't take a long rest unless you're at a sanctuary. So when the hobbits travel from Hobbiton to Bree, there's no long rest involved. So they might be able to sleep 5 hours. So they're avoiding exhaustion or something like that, but they're not able to recharge spell slots. They're not able to do a long rest healing. They're not able to do any of that. So I'm definitely going to adapt that mechanic here. The things that I need to add in are there need to be some provisional means to rest in the field, right? And then there also needs to be some provisional means to establish a temporary camp right near dungeons. So you travel across the wilderness, you get to your dungeon, you need to be able to set up a camp. And it takes a long time. Yeah, don't forget tons of dark vision. Yeah. Tusky the Dragon says, yeah, don't forget dark vision. Actually, let's talk about that for a second because people talk about dark vision consistently. I agree. It's weird. It's weird that so many races have dark vision that it seems like a big drawback to the races that don't, right? But I don't think dark vision is not what people think it is. At the same time, I would say dark vision is not what people think it is. First of all, it only goes out to about 60 feet. So there's a number of cases if you run a modern battle match, which are 25 by 25, that means you're almost always within your dark vision. But you can do things like dim light provides disadvantage to ranged, that it's really a melee attack. You can do things like that as a house rule. But really the big deal is perception. So you're easy to ambush. Even if you have dark vision, you're easy to ambush in the dark because you still it's considered dim light for you, not bright light. So that's something to remember. But yeah, I think it's a big problem. Yeah, I see you saw the Notion tab. We're going to switch over to that when I do some of the writing of the rules. Notion is a great, it's kind of an online, I think WordPress is not, like a notepad. It's not quite that. It's not quite a word processor, but it's a great way to aggregate notes. So it's sort of an online replacement for OneNote, which it's too clunky. The version differences are too much. OneNote got on my nerves too much, and it's too closed, right? This is all online. It's easy to use. I will say I've gotten so much. You can see I have a lot of different headings. Under each heading, like if I go to my campaigns, this Rime of the Frost Maiden, which I just wrapped this week, campaign notes, and if I go up to session notes, crazy number of sessions. It gets slow after a while. It starts responding fairly slow. And I have a fast internet connection. But I recommend Notion SO. I think it's really good. Notion is kind of a weird mix between word processing, web page editor, and note-taking app. Yeah, I agree. And you can share docs, which is a good thing. I often share a post or something like that ahead of time when I'm vetting stuff, although I've just taken to posting it up on my website now that it's fast again. But yeah. It helps organize things. I like it. if you don't want to put up a website for your campaign, if you don't want to run different things for your campaign, I think it really does help quite a bit. So yeah, anyway, for the listeners here, how's my audio? I've noticed on the past couple of shows, I got a new computer, it must be 2 months ago now. And my audio has been a constant bane for me. It's been really low. I think I have one show where it clipped. It went too high and it clipped. And then I just couldn't get it loud enough. It was been really low in a couple of things. So any heads up from the audience on if my audio is good? Is it too quiet? Is it too loud? Is it clipping? That would be great. I might have to invest in a mixer or at least a powered USB at some point. But anyway, I'll try to work out what I can do. So what do I want out of the features of the Journey and Sanctuary rules? So what I want out of it, I don't know if I can articulate this. It takes a minute to, I think it's a worthwhile exercise. There's a concept of user stories in software engineering I'm going to use here, like what can do what and why, right? Who can do what and why. So, so I'm going to try to use that as a little bit of a format here. And that's characters can journey, can travel. I guess you kind of do that. Can experience. I don't know if it's a great format or not. Audio seems good, but I have my headphones cranked up right now to max, and they're powerful headphones. It's about average volume for me. Yeah, let me see. I don't know if this gets me a little higher or not. I don't know if that's a little louder. Hopefully I'm not blowing your ears out. I'll have to look at something. If this doesn't fix it, I'm afraid I'm going to start clipping because I'm getting into the yellow on my mixer. So yeah, we'll have to see what that deal is at some other time. On my side, it looks loud. But anyway, so what do I want out of this? So what I wanted is to extend travel. So I want travel to... it's hard to create these features because in some sense I'm undoing things. Now, why do I want this? Let me start with that. Travel. One of the biggest problems with travel and exploration in D&D is the long rest mechanic, in my opinion. And I've said that multiple shows. If you've been around for a while, you've heard that before. That you're not going to have 6 encounters a day, just random encounters for traveling. So you're alpha striking everybody during every encounter on the road. You just rest. You camp. No matter what the quality of your rest is, you rest up the next day. You're full hit points, full spells, and you just keep going. No matter what the conditions, no matter what anything else. And so that creates a situation where road travel is really kind of lame, right? There's no, if you fall down if you get to a rock slide, you take a D6 hit points, nobody cares, right? Nobody cares because you're just healing up that night. There's other problems around like you're a ranger and you can't get lost, or you have this certain background so you can never starve. There's things like that are also problematic. But a first order problem is just the rest mechanic and the fact that there is no... let me just reach what I want to address. No, I want to return to the idea of attrition in the field. I want to include a mechanic. I want gameplay, not mechanic. I want to include gameplay around shelter and setting yourself up. I want the variability of travel to matter. That's another thing that I think the exploration pillar is problematic with, is that it doesn't matter road, mountains, anything. You just travel at something like 24 miles a day. That's it. 24 miles a day, that's what you travel at. Good on you. 5 hexes or something like that on the standard like Phandalin overland map. Now that's weird, but that doesn't account for like roads and woodlands. So I'm going to include a simple both navigation. So this needs to be both navigation, success, and terrain. So I'm going to create basically 2 different base travels, right? It's going to be 25 miles a day, and then there's going to be 14 miles a day, like 15 miles a day. Like you want to keep it to 5 miles because that's the increment of hexes on most overland maps, right? So, and then there's a roll on top of that to navigate that you might lose 5 miles, right? You might lose 5 or 10 miles on your journey that day. depending on how successful you are. Now, roads will probably cut that out, but we'll create a little travel mechanic. So I'll start with resting, and then we'll create a travel mechanic. So this is all by way to inform the blog post I'm going to make this week. So you'll see a blog post this week. If it gets really involved, which I suspect it might, I might end up doing it next week because it might take me a little bit longer. So, and then this is the journey mechanic. So I might jump around a little bit for some of this. So turn into a headline too. See, I don't know how it might be for others, but I can hear. I can hear. I already said that. It's often written medicine wisdom. Did I do wisdom medicine? I think it's medicine wisdom. I think it's wisdom medicine, right? It's the ability check. So the format. I don't think you're right about that, to be honest. I think that it's an ability, because everything is an ability check, and you add your proficiency if you're proficient with that skill. So good way to find out. D&D Beyond. Let's go to one of these source modules. And this is educational for me, if this doesn't work. Let's see if I run across a skill check here. 24 hours blizzards. Let me try blizzards here. I know that has some skill checks in it. Yeah, wisdom survival, DC 15 wisdom survival. It is typically written in the DMG and other things like that. And that's, why is that? Because everything is an ability check. People forget that. And that you're not, people get very upset about off, what they call off ability checks. That's not how it works. You make some ability check to resist something, and then you may or may not be able to add in your proficiency bonus if you're proficient in a certain type of skill. So while they tell you in the skill table, typically survival, for instance, works under medicine. There's no reason why it can't be like con survival. I often do a con based survival check to see if somebody can get sleep in bad weather, if they don't have proper shelter, that kind of stuff. So what they call off ability skill checks or something. There's no reason why you can't do that. So yeah, so that is the format. Yeah, it probably pops out on the character sheet because you have to look down your skill first, right? But when it's listed in modules, it's listed and material, it's listed as the ability and the skill. All right, so journey down here. So what this is so given an expanded role like that journeys can now take resources. Managing those resources become important, right? So, and then having parties take different roles on that do different things based on the role they have can affect travel in a good way. Now, in Adventures in Middle Earth, that let me see if I can find it. But culture, journeys, 164. Their PDFs are crap. They're not bookmarked, so I have to scroll down. Give me 1 second. So that means that in the context of a journey for in Middle Earth, you're managing what's called shadow, which is really despair or the looks of the Dark One or encounters with Sauron's minions. That's not going to translate. So we're going to need to come up with a different mechanic. And I have some ideas about how to do that, but you can be a guide or a scout, or a guide does stuff like how much planning out your journey ahead of time and how safe the route will be based on your guide roll when you start, and how much shadow you're going to have at the end of it, right? What that might translate to is how long or short a journey is. Do you take extra time? So what I want to do is create some roles and some small benefits around that. So this becomes, in my mind, what this is like are ship combat rules in like a Traveler or Star Frontiers or something like that, where parties now have different roles, and this is considered a unit moving together, and they affect the journey in some meaningful way. So like a warder would be something like, I'll give you a tease for what this might be. So like if someone says they're the warder for the party, in other words, they're guarding against ambush, they're guarding, right? They're the guardian of the party. They could do something like their perception check can replace anyone's during an ambush. So in other words, typically when a party gets into an ambush they come forward, well, actually during surprise, not an ambush. What happens is they ambush gets kicked off, everybody rolls a perception check. People who are under a certain threshold, they're surprised, which means they can't act in that round, and the whole thing proceeds from there. What this can do instead is you can roll, you still have to, everybody has to roll surprise like everybody else, but the warder gets a special surprise roll, and people can replace their roll with the warder's roll if they want. It's not quite advantage because everyone doesn't get their individual second roll. It's a sort of a grouped second roll, but it's a nice advantage if somebody has a high perception and they want to take on that roll and they understand what it is. So that would be the kind of thing you can do. Like, for example, in survival might be used for based on a book knowledge. Yeah, that's right. So Tusky, the dragon is saying, yeah. So when we were talking earlier about off skills, which I love, I don't think they're used enough. Although I'll say like 60 to 70% of skills are right out of the book. But like, let's say you wanted to have some knowledge of survival rather than wisdom, right? Have you studied a map? Do you know where something is in the terrain? That's a great use of in survival. Now, the problem becomes quickly, and you'll see in some of these rules, it's hard to find another skill besides survival, right? It's basically survival or medicine, and that's it, right? So, so we'll see. So that's the warder's role. Like, they can basically replace their you can use your perception check or their perception check during an ambush. A Pathfinder, I don't know the exact ability yet, but this will directly affect finding things and navigation. Maybe that's not what I really want. Steward, that's somebody who can like heal, set up camp, do all those sorts of things. Steward, so this will blend with the mechanics above. They can cook meals or provide medicine. You can replace your there's a mechanic that we'll get to in the rest mechanic where you can get although you can't take a long rest, so you can't heal overnight, you might be able to do something like a medical check if you're sleeping 8 hours outside a base or outside of a sanctuary to get some sort of healing. And it'll be similar with the steward where they can make a medicine check and you can use your check or their check depending on how you want to do it. And then the captain, that's not the greatest thing. I was thinking more of a guide, like a leader. What would a leader do? I don't know. Well, I actually think leader on the road. And then I want to get into how well you know terrain. So I want a little blurb about have you taken the time to study maps and something like that. What else do I want to put in here? Travel times. I mean, I think that can be pretty basic, right? So the typical travel time is about 25 miles a day, and that's decent. That's a road travel, right? $25 miles a day, road travel, or good terrain. Or we'll say 15 miles a day for most territory. So you can travel through woods or hills, and we're not going to get into compound like wooded hills or anything like that. It's just that's what it is. And then maybe something like 5 miles a day. Mountains, big steep mountains, because there has to be some sort of real detriment to traveling in the mountains, and things like roads can increase it by another 5 or something like that. I don't want to say double it because then we're traveling faster than if you want a good road. Difficult terrain applies. This is apart from difficult terrain. So this. There's a ranger ability that lets you ignore difficult terrain for travel, which is there's another mechanic. One of the other second tier problems after resting. The second tier problem with 5th edition D&D is that the bottom line is that there's a ton of mechanics that just invalidate attempts to make journeys meaningful. So getting lost or taking longer in terrain or anything like that, there's a ranger ability that you can't get lost and you ignore difficult terrain. Those two abilities alone basically invalidate most kinds of wilderness play. And that's a problem. I don't want to throw out options for a game simply because somebody took a character class. And I don't want to invalidate their class. So I feel stuck as a GM, right? I don't want to. Thanks a lot for coming by, Tusky the Dragon. So I don't want to invalidate what they're trying to do, but therein lies the problem. So let me talk about how I'm going to change the resting mechanic. So long rests can only be taken at sanctuaries. That's straight out of Adventures in Middle Earth. In the parlance of D&D, I want to actually change it so it's not like Rivendell or Bree or something like that. Quality of lodging. I think there's something in the D&D 5e quality of lodging. DGIN. I'm going to see if there's some kind of like in room or yes. So you basically need something at comfortable or above, right? So there's lifestyle qualities. So there's squalid, poor, modest, comfortable, wealthy, aristocratic, blah blah blah. Let me see. In rooms, in stay, modest, comfortable. Yeah. So you need something akin to a comfortable in room, which would be like a private in room. So meaning something that qualifies as comfortable or above lodging quality. Let's say comfortable in room, house, etc. Now that begs the question of what do poor people do? Do they not recover? I'll get to base camps in a second. So we'll do survival base camps. All right, base camps are basically field camps. So that's it. You can't take a long rest unless you're at a comfortable lodging location, house, in room, something like that, or a base camp. So when you're out in the field, you're doing travel, you can take it. You can sleep for 8 hours, but you have to be able to do something. But you have to have some kind of lodging where you can take this over a long period of time. Base camp. This is what I said for base camp. Now, the gap for me for Middle Earth role playing is that often players travel to a location like a dungeon. They set up. I want them tired from the journey when they arrive. Right, the road itself should be a little hard and take its toll on them. But when they get to a place, be able to recover, study spells. Because remember, you can't take a long rest, so you're not able to refresh spell slots. So it's not like the cleric is topping everybody off every night. It actually extends that over time. Right, so it takes the journey and turns that into a single encounter. Right, so there's no long rest in between. I like that. I think it's good. So getting to where you want to go, though, you can establish a base camp. A base camp is where you can take a long rest. So it takes 8 hours, proper equipment, and a DC 15 wisdom survival check to set up a camp in the wilderness or dungeons that counts as a sanctuary. So that's great. You can still take short rests, by the way. As a matter of fact, that's the only way to heal. The other modification to long rest is you do not recover your full hit points over long rest. You only spend hit dice. So let me put that in here. Hit dice. Healing is only, that's down here. No complete healing. And let's make this bold. All right. No complete healing during a long rest. You may only spend hit dice to heal. The amount is halved during the short rest. And I'd like some feedback on that. I'm actually torn about that. So in other words, you can sleep for 8 hours and take and not be a long rest. So you're not regaining spell slots, you're not regaining your hit dice, you're not doing any of that stuff. But if you sleep for 8 hours or you wait till your camp at night, you can get your full hit dice when you roll them. But if you just take the hour rest during the day, you're only getting half of that. Now I don't know if that's too harsh or what. The other option is I could just say it's half the die roll. The difference between half the result, which includes your con bonus, or half of the die roll. Yeah, I'm not sure. So right now, I think let's take the path of least resistance, and say you only spend hit dice to heal during short. So there's basically another type of rest, which is an interim rest, right, or a sleep. And that's where you just take 8 hours to sleep, and that's what I'm trying to differentiate here. So 8 hours. So that's not really a long rest. That is a I also want to a full rest. This is a 20. So before I get off to that, so 20. There's got to be a way to rest in the field, so you're not completely left without any options. So you can still take a full rest in the field is one option I'm considering here, but it takes 24 hours. So full rest. You can gain the benefit of a long rest outside of a sanctuary by taking 24 hours but rest. So there's a couple of different options now, right? That you can't heal during you can't take a long rest unless you're in the sanctuary. Healing is only done by spending hit dice. It doesn't matter if it's long rest or short rest. So the long rest camp can only be taken in sanctuary. You can set up a base camp, which counts as a sanctuary, but it takes 8 hours to set one up. Proper equipment, which means tents for everybody and so forth. And then a DC 15 wisdom survival check to do that. Or without that, let's say you really you're trying to survive in the wilderness. If you take a full day to do nothing but rest, you can go ahead and take a long rest. If you take a full rest, get the benefits of a long rest. And I need one more type, which is what if you just sleep 8 hours? Right? So in the wilderness, you're sleeping, right? You're doing the typical 8 hour sleep period. You're not getting the benefits of a long rest because you don't have a base camp. But could you do something like gain 1 hit point, right? Do some sort of healing. Is that necessary? It's called sleep. Sleep. 8 hours or more of sleep removes. I should probably put that under healing. 8 hours more sleep removes 1 level of exhaustion. Where's one? I'm going to go with this, right? Because you can still remove exhaustion. You don't need to be taking a long rest to remove exhaustion. Where are we at? So sleep is one of them. Ability damage. Takes 1 hit die. Spend 1 hit die to clear 1 point of ability damage. So ability damage is a big deal now. Spend 1 hit die to heal 1 point of ability damage. Drain is another one. Drain. You must heal any normal damage before applying healing to any normal damage before applying hit die rolls to heal drain. All right, so those are the big things you want to account for. So healing is basically you don't heal completely during a long rest anymore. Long rest, all that does is give you back half of your hit die, spent hit die per long rest. Sleep, whether you're in a sanctuary or not, sleep for 8 hours removes one level of exhaustion. Ability damage is healed by spending 1 hit die to heal 1 point of ability damage. So ability damage gets to be a big deal, probably a bigger deal in this system. That's fine. And then drain, which doesn't happen all that much. You must heal normally before you can begin to heal any drain. So those are probably edge cases that we don't have to worry too much about. Then we get into long rest. When and where can you take a long rest? Again, you can only take long rest in sanctuaries. That means a place of comfortable quality or above, in-room, house, whoever. Base camp, basically you need to be, safe, secure, sheltered, and fed. Safe and secure is probably the same thing, and fed. Base camp. You can establish a base camp by spending 8 hours to dig trenches, put up tents, get water set up, proper drainage in the camp, spaces to study for mages or prey, all of that bit. So that takes 8 hours to set up a proper base camp. And then an alternative is a full rest. You gain a benefit of long rest outside of sanctuary by taking 24 hours to do so. To do nothing but rest requires a DC 15 wisdom survival check, because I want to keep it normalized. The differences. Check. So it's not guaranteed, right? It's not a great option. It just doesn't force everybody to get lazy and start taking 24 hours. Instead, it's always a better option to set up a base camp, right? Because it's a go-to after that. It also brings back into this concept of followers, right? You used to have followers in original editions of D&D where you had people guarding your camp, carrying your supplies, bringing donkeys out there, the whole bit. This sort of gets back into that. All right. Let's see. So do I want a difference in long rest, like in a sanctuary? Here, so I said above, resting on the road. I'm reading some of my own stuff here. So I'm thinking about one of the other things I'm thinking about steward. We talked about down here, roles of a steward. At night, I want to create the equivalent of bardic. There's a bardic inspiration or healing, or what? Let me look at D&D Beyond here. Bards have an ability where they can essentially add to. So it's like Song of Rest, I think it's called. Song of Rest. Here we go. It gives them a D6 when you're healing. Any creature, you play your instrument, any creatures nearby who can hear your performance regains hit points at the end of a short rest by spending 1 or more hit die. Each of those creatures gains an extra D6 hit points. So I'm trying to create something like that, but for medicine, like regular like expended use of a medicine medical kit, or cook a good meal. Good berries would not count as a good meal. They would just keep you from starving, right? So what am I trying to say here? What do I have so far? Roll 1 of your hit die type for healing if someone succeeds on a D. That's resting on the road. All right, taking care of this bullet. So yeah, basically you have 2 options, resting on the road. I don't want to make this better than the bardic. So when spending, so maybe this is the way that things become much better at night. Like where healing at night becomes better. You can get a good meal in, you can get medical care. So what do I want out of this? They will be able to stack too. So the problem is the bardic ability is a D6, right? It goes up after 5th level to a D8 so far. I don't want to overshadow the Bardic ability, so I need to think about this, because what I want to do is add some bonus to the hit die that the person rolls, right? And that making like a short rest where you're just sort of sitting on a rock for an hour, I want that to have a slight less effect than sleeping for 8 hours at night. But that, that may not be a long rest, right? So, so I'm looking for some way to do this and I've thought some mechanics before, but it starts to get, I feel like it's starting to get in the realm of too complicated. So if you take a normal short rest, what I could say is you just get half of the die rolled, right? And any bonus added. Long rest at asleep. I could just, that'd be, so just asleep. Could give that D6. So this doesn't do it at any short rest. Yeah, I think that's probably good enough. So resting on the road. Before a sleep, I'll call this restful sleep. Restful sleep. Not everybody sleeps or rest. Let's just call it. Well, long rest and rest. I guess that's why they're using the term. Let me pull up a thesaurus, see if there's a better word for rest. Thesaurus, sleep, coma, summer trance, bedtime. Yeah, rest. What do we have here? Vacation, break. No, breather, calmness. Nothing good. That's why there's probably term problems here. By the way, I put up a poll earlier in the week. Who's the most likely to breach consent and safety? Yeah, down here, players. But actually, if you look at it, I think it all comes out about even, because DMs engage with players more, so their opportunities to have a breach is higher. There's usually 4 players as opposed to 1 DM, right? So it counts for. So I think at the end of the day, this shows everybody's about as equal to cause some sort of safety violation. All right, so all right, let's go to. Let me get rid of that. I don't want to carry it with me. All right, so what am I doing here? So I want to sleep. So I want a long rest, a short rest, and some sort of sleep, right? Some sort of some in-between rest, right? That's not a long rest. That's not a short rest. That's like a moderate rest or some crap like that, which is basically pause or sleep or trance if they're meditating race. I'll call it sleep for now and come up with a separate term. 8 hours or more of sleep, meditation. Removes 1 level of exhaustion. And I'll just call it restful sleep down here for before a restful sleep. Players may benefit from one of the following. All right. Roll one of your hit. So I think I'm going to change this. Restful sleep. Players may gain an additional 1d6 to any hit point recovery. If they have either a good meal or medical care. What is a good heal of medical care? That's one problem with Notion is it's a little laggy, so I'm trying to quickly like edit things. All right, so a medical care. DC is a DC 15, wisdom, medicine, check, and expend one use of a healing kit. Let me look to see if healer's kit, I think it's called. I'm not sure D&D has the 10 uses per healer kit. Healing kit, herbalism kit, healing, dungeon master. Equipment. It's called medicine. No, maybe it's called heal. Healer's kit. There we go. I don't know why it wasn't coming up. This kit is leather pouch, blah, blah, blah. As an action, you can spend one use of the kit to stabilize a creature with 0 hit points without needing to make. So yeah, you can spend one use of the kit. It doesn't tell you how many uses you have. Used to be you had 10 uses. So I'll just put that in my notes. That's a gap. You can spend one use of a healing kit. 10 uses per healing kit. 10 uses per kit. All right. So what will happen down in the steward is that you can players can replace the steward's role for theirs in any medicine or cooking check for resting on the road. So yeah, that's what the role of the steward now is, basically foraging, cooking, all that other kind of stuff. They can forage as they journey, things like that. I should put a little thing, forage as they journey. All right. All right, the other thing is cooking, right? The problem is, what is a cooking kit? Is there a cooking kit in 5th edition? There's no cooking skill. A mess kit, no. Cooking. Custom rooms. There's like some supplement added to cooking feat or some kind of cook's kit. Later, cook. Storm King's Thunder. Nope. Cobalt Servants, Arrival. Anybody has any options on this, shout them out, by the way. Cooks. Now, how would you cook? I don't want to create a new skill. That's a chef. There's a feat for a chef. What is this? Time spent, blah, 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 blah. You increase your constitution risk for 1. You gain proficiency with cook's utensils if you don't already have it. As part of a short rest, you can cook a special meal. Provided you have ingredients to cook your utensils, you can prepare enough food for a number of creatures. I don't care about that. At the end of the short rest, any creature who eats the food and spends 1 or more hit dice regains an extra 1d8. Yeah, so this is, you're basically better at it. This is for a short rest. And this seems dumb, though. Like, as a short rest, you can do all this in an hour. I can barely cook a meal in an hour in a modern kitchen. That's stupid. For 1 hour work, when you finish a long rest, you can cook a number of treats equal to your proficiency bonus. They last 8 hours after being made. A creature can use a bonus action to eat 1 treat to gain temporary hit points equal to their proficiency bonus. All right, so this rule doesn't collide with that. This is a dumb feat. I'm not going to remove it, but the problem being, we're leaning yet again into survival, and we are, because I can't think of another skill that would apply here. Skill. Player skills. 5e skills. Yeah, I can't think of a skill that would athletics, nope, acrobatics, sleight of hand, no. Arcana nature, maybe. Yeah, I mean, it seems a bit of a rush. I can give the alternate. I could say either nature or animal handling, insight, no. Medicine, perception, survival. There's really no good skills for that, right? It's just heavily leaning into survival. So I'll let them take medicine, nature, or survival, because it could be any one of those things. So we'll say that. Good meal. DC 15, check. 2 hours, so we want to say 2 hours. DC 15, check. Against any of intelligence, nature. That seems dumb, to be honest. Say wisdom. This really makes wisdom an uber stat, because really the big stats in the game, I think, your primary attribute is probably everyone's number one. It's a coin flip as to whether people take wisdom or constitution next, right? Either for the hit point boost or the saving throw boost. Intelligence is almost a meaningless stat in this game. And I'd argue strength, unless it's your primary stat, is pretty much meaningless. They're the ones by far that get dump statted the most. And this just leans into that. But I can't redesign the entire system. I'm trying to redesign a component here. Wisdom survival or wisdom medicine. We'll just leave it wisdom survival. I'm trying to twist myself in knots here to accommodate the system. I wish there were more option, but we just don't have it. So it is an option. You can go with medicine check or survival check, either one. Yeah, and then the steward can basically replace anybody's role. So basically, this is people making their own meals or doing their own care, and they can replace it with the steward's role instead if they want. So it's kind of a light advantage opportunity. I like that. In other words, it provides the lowest possible value you can have. All right, I don't need this. So that's it. All right, so this is so water perception replaces anyone. Sorry. So then we're down into terrain and how well you know it. Yeah, I don't think I need that. I wanted to establish a system of studying maps and things like that before you go, but it's probably a bridge too far for these sets of rules. So travel times get modified, so they're little variables, so that since you're not able to long rest on the road, encounters matter, and the number of how long it takes to get to a location begins to matter again. So that leans into that. And then different players can have different roles on the road. The warder lets people basically replace the warder's perception check with their own during a surprise event. The pathfinder, this affects how quickly you're able to get through terrain. I don't have a rule for that yet, but I'll develop one during the week. Steward, they can replace. They can use the players can replace the steward's role on either medicine or good meal, but the steward has to decide which they're going to use when they're resting on the road. So so that works for me, because I was going to say, does it matter, right? Because this can take place during a short or long rest. It's just whenever they spend it, I'm not going to differentiate before. Although I'm just saying right here, it can only happen during restful sleep. That's part of it. That's fine. And I've said what the restful sleep is up here. All right. So let me start top to bottom, summarize. So steward and captain, I need to come up with something for the captain to do. There's a couple of traveler rules where, like someone's spotting hidden traps. So that's what probably Pathfinder would do, right? Spot hidden traps, spot for hidden traps. Traps or dangers. Replace. That's what I'll do. Players can replace and dangers. Pathfinders are scouting for hitting traps and dangers. I might as well just call them a scout. I think that's what they're called in Adventures in Middle Earth. Right? When players replace the scouts, save, or perception check. Whatever roll they make, scouts roll against environmental danger with their own while traveling. So in other words, if everybody has to make a DC, like a DC 10 dexterity check against a landslide, the scout makes theirs and everybody can replace theirs with the scouts if they want to. And this is the scout's ability to sort of avoid dangers and things like that. So it's not guaranteed. It's a big boost. It's not guaranteed. But I like this idea of being able to, there's basically like a minimum roll, a minimum value the party can get, right? There's some safety net based on the role someone's playing in the party during a journey. I like that. So yeah, I think that's good. I don't know what the captain's going to do. So the captain, there's this thing called guide. Captain isn't probably what I should call it. I might as well just use the guide, right? There's a guide, a scout. So they're the navigator, right? They determine how long the actual journey takes and what kind of dangers you run into. And how long and what kind of dangers. So that's probably some sort of wisdom check. So I'll have to figure out what that would be, right? So it would basically be DC 15. Again, I'm doing survival, but there's no way out of it. It's really the only mechanism. DC 15 int survival. Thank God I'm able to use something else. Check when traveling, or journey takes twice as long. Encounter something that makes the journey take twice as long. Not twice as long, half the distance. It halves your progress on a journey. That could be, road is washed out. This roll is advantage on a road. So that roll can be made with advantage on the road. Because roads can still be a problem, right? They can wash out, trees can fall across them. They can do all kinds of just crazy stuff can happen on a road. You encounter other parties. You have an argument. I mean, just all kinds of weird things can happen, even on a road that people don't realize. What else can we do here? That's what the guide's role is. It's at disadvantage in unfamiliar terrain and without maps, etc. So in other words, it's disadvantage. If you just say, I know it's south, and you just head out there and you don't know what the terrain is like, that roll is made at disadvantage, right? Getting there. And again, what do each one of these do? Warders mitigate against ambush, right? Scouts mitigate against terrain hazards. Stewards provide a bonus to healing and road recovery, right? Guides provide mitigate loss of travel time and getting lost and things like that. That's what those roles are, right? So players can adopt those, and we can, and with the intention of these rules is to turn travel into, and being out in the wilderness, into something that actually affects players, takes resources, engages them through some sort of gameplay mechanic, and provides some, something for them to plan through and interact with and feel like they're benefiting one another without stepping on other abilities. So I think that's a good set. So this is the outline. I'm going to write up this. Might not come out till next week. I might do a thing on abilities rolls this week instead. But this might take a little bit of a minute for me to think through to get this at least somewhat right in a first draft. I am gearing up for a new campaign at the end of July. This is a set of rules that I would use in a campaign. The gritty rules I posted earlier, I would only use last week. Those are interesting and kitschy, but I would only use those for like a three session one shot. I wouldn't use that for anything length of time. This is something I would seriously consider adopting for a long-term campaign. I tend to play my campaigns, it's tier 1 and maybe first half of tier 2. I think the 8th level is the highest I've ever gotten in a campaign. I just don't like tier 3 play. But yeah, that's what I'm looking at. Okay, I think that's where I'm going to cut it off today. If you're joining me here today, I appreciate it. If you're watching this online later, I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you found something useful out of this. If you have any comments, go ahead and leave them down on the tavern wall. Go ahead and follow me under Optional Rule on Twitter. I'm optionalrule.com online. You can find these blog posts and all my previous blog posts. No Patreon, no anything like that. This is just me liking gaming and talking to people about games. So I hope you'll do the social media things, like, subscribe, follow, all of those things. Engage me on Twitter. Engage me in other media. Mostly I'm active on Twitter. So go ahead and tag me on Twitter if you have anything to discuss. I hope you found some of this interesting and useful, and I hope you'll check it out when I have it posted in a week or two. So thank you for joining me. Remember, in the meantime, fun is not optional. Thank you, everybody. I hope you have a great day. I'll talk to you next week.